The Maldives, known for crystal clear water, white sandy beaches and overwater villas. I'm sure the most of you guys searched already for budget travels on some traveling websites, but there are many people who make a lot of mistakes, and there are also a lot of traps for budget travels. In my video, I will explain you how to make a budget travel, and I will share my experiences, how you can avoid the biggest traps, and how you can make a perfect holiday just for relatively less money. So we will start about to understand the Maldives, to show you the geographical situations, also the economical, because it's very important to understand how you should search for a perfect place and not make the same mistakes as all the others. At the end, I will also make a short compare to a budget inhabited local island and also a resort island. I also will make a resume about my experiences and my honest point of view. So if you're ready, let's get started. Let's start with the location of the Maldives. The Maldives are located in the middle of the Indian Ocean, just southwest of India and Sri Lanka, and just north of the UK, but that's another story. The Indian Ocean is actually home to several beautiful luxury holiday destinations. Beside of the Maldives, there are also the Seychelles and Mauritius. I will also make in future some videos about that. But let's get back to the Maldives. So the small tiny islands may be confusing you about the real size of the Maldives. Actually, the Maldives has a length of 863 kilometers from the northernmost island to the southernmost island. Just to make it clear about the size, this is almost the same size as the northernmost point of Germany to the southernmost point of Germany. The Maldives has also a huge exclusive economic zone. So together with the land territories, it's almost 1 million square kilometer, which is almost the size of Turkey with their exclusive economical zone. So just to make it clear how big this area is. Let's take a look to the economy of the Maldives. The GDP per capita is about 15,500 US dollars. And as you guess, the most of it comes from the tourism, and the most industrial facilities are about fishing. The tourism on the Maldives has actually quite a young history. It started just in 1972 on the island of Kurumbas. It's very close to Mali, and it is still a resort island. But till 2009, it was strictly forbidden to step on the local islands. So there was a strict line between the resort islands, where you can have your holiday, drinking your alcohol, being with bikinis, and the local islands, which should have been untouched in the culture. 2009, there were some reforms, so they slowly started to give licenses to guest house owners. A few islands, not every island, but many local islands get the license to make guest houses. There are also a high concentration on several islands, but I will show you this later. In 2019, the Maldives had about 2 million guests and a revenue of $2.8 billion. The average salary on the Maldives, if you have a good job, are around €800 or $1,000, some people say. But actually, many workers, especially in the hotels, came from countries like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and they get only 200 to 300 euros. Even the Maldives are famous for luxury travel, with resorts where you can pay even $10,000 per night. But you will get surprised actually how poor the public is and the average citizen. If you get a good paid job, so with 800 euros, you can live very well, because you don't need anything. You don't need a car, you don't need a big house or something like that. But many people earn less of that. So I tell you just to make you clear about your outcomes on the islands, if you want to buy something, if you want to have some services, so you can estimate the costs, what you pay, if this is too high or too less on a local island. the unemployment rate is on 6%, but actually the youth unemployment rate is much higher. Let's come to the islands. Maldives have in total 1,192 islands. There are 860 uninhabited islands and only around 187 inhabited islands. There are also 145 only resort islands. These numbers are still changing. So a few years before, the number of inhabited islands was over 200 and the resort islands were much less. So some less dense populated islands were made empty by the government and it was turned into resort islands, while some other inhabited islands were made more dense by population because so they settled the other island inhabitants on more dense inhabited islands. But we will concentrate now on the inhabited islands. The budget trouble will be here. Let's get back on the map of the Maldives and zooming in. So as you can see, Maldives are an archipelago state, but it is also being separated in atolls. So this is what you can see here, shaped like circles. Every atoll is also a own separated administrative area, so like a province. And this is important to know because your orientation, when you are searching for hotels and guest houses, the first thing you will say the name of the atoll instead of the island name. Because here are some atolls which you should avoid even if it's very cheap, and you should know that, but I will show you later which atolls you should avoid. But first let's start with the capital of Male, because this is the first you will see when you arrive on the airport. So the islands around Male are the most populated islands. There are also some artificial islands like the airport island and Hulhumali. Here are also the first traps and first mistakes you could do. I know some people who had made the budget holiday on Male or Hulhumali, but I will tell you honestly, this is just a waste of time. Let's zoom in on Male. So this is Male. As you can see, it is very dense populated. You can see only concrete. The streets are very narrow. There's a lot of traffic, which I can really not understand. So this is such a small island, but there are so many cars. On the eastern and the western end, you have artificial beaches, which are really not special. It is just okay if you want to cool down, but that's it. And Mali is also the most dense populated city on earth. In Mali, there live in 78,000 people on 1 square kilometer. Just to make you clear how dense it is, New York City has 10,700 people per square kilometer, so it's 7 times more than New York City. But you have nothing historical, nothing cultural. But if you are searching on your hotel searching websites, one of the first ranked budget holidays will be here on Male. So they're quite cheap, but you have nothing to say actually. Where you also get a lot of budget, especially packages for your travel when you're searching for cheap holidays on Maldives, are resulted on Hulhumale. Hulhumale, just north of the airport, is an artificial island, and it is mainly made to build residences, industries, and also expand their budget holiday and tourism industry. Let's zoom in on Hulhumale. So Hulhumale has a more interesting beach than Male, but it is really nothing more special than any other beach holiday destination on earth. In the front along the beach there are the tourism buildings, so you have hotels, guest house, restaurants. In the middle you have the housing district, and on the back side you have industry, so public buildings and sport areas and some parks. But if you have to stay somewhere around the airport because of flight or return flight, I would recommend you Hulhumale instead of Male. At least you have a beach, you have a kind of a cafes, and it's definitely better than Male. You can also see how this area has developed since the past years. This is how it looks today. This is how it looks 2012. You can see Hulhumale is just half finished. And this is how it looks 2001. So Hulhumale was not really existing. And if you take a look on the southwest, so on the left side of this picture, you can see this tiny island. This is the famous trash island Thidafushi. It's an island entirely made of trash. There are some industries, but the most of it is just trash from the resort island. And this is how it looks today. In the center of this satellite picture, you see some steam. These are not clouds. This is the smoke from the burning trash. So if you are around Mali and if you are unlucky, this smelling smoke will come just into your nose. Also, there's a lot of toxic waste on this island, which is also dangerous, so around this area. If you take a ferry or a speedboat to your local island, you will cross this island. So how to find a great budget island? Actually, at first it starts with avoiding the wrong local islands. So after Male and Hulhumale, the next spots which will be shown on your hotel or travel searching websites is the island of Mafushi. There are many cheap guest houses and hotels, and the pictures looks often like these. So okay, you have a hotel in construction in front. That's okay. So, but in general, it looks nice. You have a turquoise water, you have green coast, and it looks actually picturesque. So you think, okay, yeah, it's possible to make here a holiday. But let's see how it looks from the satellite picture. As you see, it is also very dense populated, and which you saw before in the picture, the green line is here on the left side, the very narrow strip of palm trees. And yeah, maybe some of you also remember on this one. And if you look on the south of Mafushi, you see the big building. So this is not a hotel complex, this is actually the biggest prison on the Maldives. It is within a military district zone, which is also forbidden for people. So it is really important, if you find a good hotel or a good priced package, check before on Google Maps or Google Earth the satellite pictures. I will also show you on other examples, so what you should take care of on the pictures. But let's start with our checklist. In general, I would recommend you not searching by the best price. Search on Google Maps. Search at first for your perfect island. Then you can look if there is a guest house in the island. It sounds maybe laborious, but it is actually less laborious than checking every single hotel on a budget. So if the pictures are true and how the islands look like. So I will show you how you can save some time. You have to orient yourself on Google Maps on the satellite pictures. So this is how I did. At first, it should be not too close to Mali. As I said, it is very dense populated, very dirty, and you have the trash islands. So you should have a quite of distance to Mali. Also, the atolls there are the most dense populated. So it doesn't care which island, there's no or very less interesting islands around this area. To orientate yourself when you're searching on the websites and you get the results, skip all the results which is in the North Male Atoll or the South Male Atoll. So we are talking just about the budget local islands. In these atolls, there are also very nice resort islands, but we are not talking about the resort islands right now. So we are looking for the local islands, and in these two atolls, they are just too dense populated. I have here another colored map, so avoid these two atolls and keep in the range which you see in green. They are much less dense populated. You have very interesting, beautiful islands, and they have guest houses, and they're even reachable by ferry or speedboat. The second point is you should not stay too far from Mali. It should definitely reachable by boat. In general, all the islands which I make green are reachable by speedboat or by ferry. Behind of this area, so there is no speedboat transfer which can bring you within a day. You remember which I showed you before, so the distances are just too wide. Even it is confusing if you go from tiny island to tiny island. The distances look maybe not that big, but they are. And after reaching this limit, you are crossing the range of a speedboat. After crossing this range, you will get, instead of a boat, the water planes, and this will skyrocket your transfer costs. On the diagram, it will look like this. It could be, even depending from which country you are traveling to Maldives, be such as expensive as your ticket from your home country to the Maldives. As you see here on this diagram, the prices for the boats starting very low, because on the Maldives you have also the ferries, the public transportation system. From Mali you can go very cheap, takes very less money, so they depend on the distances. It could be start maybe on $1-2 to up to $7-8, but it takes a lot of time. Just as an example, if you go to a local island with a speedboat transfer, which is actually also a public transport, it's not a private speedboat, there are up to 10-15 people on the speedboat, it will take around 1.5-2 hours, but with the ferry the same distance will take around 7-8-9 hours. So the ferry will stop on every single island. Depending on your island, you should also make a transfer to another ferry on an island. It depends on how many time you have. But in general, I will recommend you, even if it is more expensive, but take the speedboat. You save just so much time. Budget holiday is not about only to save money. It is also to make your holiday as much valuable as possible. You should also make your time plannings well. So consider, if you take a ferry, it is a very long ride, and you should also consider there's no transfers, no speedboat and no ferry transfer on Fridays. So make sure if you arrive on the Maldives, you do not arrive on Fridays. So because Fridays are the holy days, like the Sunday in the Western, and nobody will work on this day. The cost-benefit factor, if the distance going more far from Mali, would look like this. So if you are in Mali, it's almost zero. So I would say zero. You have really no benefit from Mali. But so the more far you go, the more beautiful it will be, and you're getting more value for your money. But just on the range limit of your speedboats or ferries. After this, it's just becomes too expensive and the benefit will drop immediately. The third point is check the population density of the island. Just as I said before, check everything on Google Maps and look how the islands are looking like. If it's populated or like these, if there are so many buildings like on this picture, it is just too much. You should imagine they have not that well developed waste disposal services right now. Even they have, but it's not enough. So they throw out many trash just into the sea. In general, the food waste goes to the sea and the rest is getting burnt on the island, but they also just throw it onto the beach or onto the street. So the more dense populated it is, the more dirty it will be, and this also drops your quality of holiday. And on the diagram it would look same like this. It's starting also from zero, because you should have a kind of a population on the island. At first, it is not allowed to go on an island which is uninhabited. But uninhabited islands, you need people there which offer a guest house or also cafe and some grocery stores, because you want to also buy your food outside, or having sometimes your lunch in a cafe, and you get your benefit from these infrastructures, but just up to a range. It also doesn't look pretty if you are on a high dense populated island. So it's about to get a very nice Maldives feeling if you are on the Maldives. So your island should look more like these, a more slightly dense populated island which has some greenery, so you can hear the birds, you can see some trees, and it just looks more beautiful if you are there on the beach. Also like these or like these. So you want to have a nice walk with your fiancé or your wife or your girlfriend. The next point are constructions. Make sure there's no big construction going on your local island. There are many constructions going on right now. So many islands, local islands, are on development to extend their landmass for farming, for football fields, or for housings, or whatever. Sometimes they have very small constructions around the harbor to make the harbor more bigger. So that will be still okay. But if you have something big like this, so you can trust me, you will not have a good holiday feeling on this island. Also, to extend these islands to fill up the reefs, you will have no reefs with life. The water will be more blurry and milky. It will be really not interesting for snorkeling or something else. So to see something interesting, you should make activities and trips, and this will cost you a lot. Also, check if there is a lagoon. This is not so much necessary, but it is a nice to have. It will look like this. If you have a lagoon, the benefit is the water is more calm. You can make very nice snorkeling by yourself, and there will be less currents and less waves. The sixth point is actually one of the most important points. Check if the island has a reef. Why is it such important? Because if you have a reef around your island which is intact, you can just stay on your island. You can swim around the reef, you can see the life underwater, you can see the fishes. So the snorkeling is just so much fun. And this makes you stay on the island much more better, and also you're saving a lot of money. On the satellite pictures, you should look if there is a dark greenery colored rocky formation around the island, and this will be the coral reefs. Also look if there's some different kind of formations, so like lagoon and lagoon. In this case, you can make more explorations under the water when you're snorkeling, and it's just more fun to dive in. They will look like these. If you see very dense dark green spots like here in the middle of the island, this is usually seagrass. As long you do not go to if you're not just going for Instagram to the Maldives Islands, make sure that there are reefs. If you find your perfect island, then check if there is a guest house. On this point, you should consider you are not on a resort island. Don't have too high expectations on your guest house. Usually the living on the islands of the Maldives are very simple. This is why I also showed you the incomes. They have a very simple life, even if you think your guest house looks not that good, but it will be a much better quality than the most of the people on this island. You do also not have the beautiful view out of your window like if you're on a water villa. If you're lucky, you will just see the inner yard or some trees, but that's it. Make sure you can live with that. You should say that your guest house just your point where you have to sleep, take a rest, take a shower, and your dinner and your breakfast. It is not entertaining, but if you're okay with that, you can have a very joyful time on the island, see the starlights and walk around the beach because it's just in a few walking distances. Check also if the island has restaurants, cafes, or some grocery stores. Usually in the guest house, your breakfast is included. For our dinner, we paid around $30 as I remember, and it was a very great dinner. But sometimes we also eat outside in the cafe. They had very simple dishes, also nice. Dishes are very simple, not much but very cheap, so between €1 and €2, which we spent. But there are not much varieties. Sometimes we eat outside, but mostly we took our dinner in our guest house. The guest house owner, and his wife, they make very delicious fresh catched fish dinners, which were amazing. But it is good to have some shops or cafes to get your lunch. If you want to have a snack, if you want to have some fruits and water to drink. But in general, you find on every inhabited island at least 1, 2, 3 grocery stores. But you should also consider these grocery stores get their goods, especially the fresh foods and vegetables from Mali, from the main market. If it's sold out, it's gone. So you should be quick to buy your banana or your apple or whatever. So the next delivery comes every, I guess, 3 days. If you would make a matrix about the important points, it would look like this. Make sure it is accessible by boat. The distances should be far enough from Mali, or it should be at least not the north and south Mali at all. Look how the population it is. Does it has a reef or not? Does it have a lagoon or not? Are the restaurants, shops? It would be a benefit. If there's no restaurant, it's also okay. Look if there's guest houses. So, and check if there are constructions going on. A checklist could be also look like this, more simple. Just make sure it is not too close to Mali, not too far from Mali. If the population density is perfect, are there no constructions? Is there a lagoon? Is there a reef? A guest house and restaurants, cafes and shops. But you don't have to make here everything green. It is also okay if it looks like these. The most important is go out from the north and south Mali Atoll, and it should be not too far, so reachable by boat. If the population density is a little bit higher, it's still okay, but it should be not too much as I showed you on the other islands like Mafushi. If there are small constructions, it's still okay. If there's no lagoon, it's also okay. But important is it should have reef and a guest house. And if there's no cafe or restaurant, it's also okay. At least there will be some grocery stores, and that's also totally enough to have your snacks and lunch. More simple is this top-down ranking. Perfect will be a local island with a perfect reef and less dense populated. If the local island more dense populated but still with a modest reef, it is also okay. But if the local island is too high dense populated, has no reef or just a modest beach, then you can just skip it. Then it comes Hulu Mali and Mali, which you should avoid for your holiday. Just if you have to stay on one of these 2 islands for your return flight, then I would recommend your Hulu Mali instead of Mali. Now we came to the transportation and the transfer. You will arrive on the airport, and just beside of the terminal there are also the jetties. From these jetties you will come to Mali, to the northeast of Mali. The most ferries and speedboats doesn't start here. You should go for your ferry or speedboat to the southwest of Mali. Our guest house owner just picked us up from the airport. To give you a more clear pictures about your costs you should expect on your trip, I will show you what we did and what we paid in total. So we have been 2 adults. It was 12 days, actually 1 day less because we stayed for a return flight on Hulhumale. We went there in the morning and our flight was late in the night. We also had 1 night in Dubai. We had our speedboat transfer. The speedboat transfer was around, as I remember, $50 per person for a round trip, and it is definitely worth. So you save just so much time and you can use this time to be on your island. If you have chosen a perfect island, you can save your money on other points. I would recommend you not to save on your transfer. We had our accommodation in the guest house on the island. We had our fresh fish dinner, not every night, so sometimes we eat in the cafe just beside of our guest house. We had amazing snorkeling trips also. Even we had a really good reef, but our guest house owner was a very kind person, so he made very exclusive trip with us. So we made 2 trips and eating outside, as I mentioned already. Also, we had some snacks and drinks from the grocery stores. And altogether, we had 2,200 euros as a whole budget for the whole trip for 2 persons. Of course, this can be even cheaper. If we would had to take the ferry and if we would hadn't eat our dinner in our guest house, we could had even drop this budget under 2,000. So this budget trip was actually kind of experiment from us. I wanted to make an as cheap holiday as possible, but to make your holiday more valuable, I wanted to have a great dinner. I wanted to have my speedboat transfer just to save my time, but it is everything up to you. If you have a more closer island, if there are better restaurants on the island, you can try to save more money. How are now the differences between the local island and a resort island? As the most know, the Maldives are famous for their water villas. These nice water villas has also another reason beside of getting more higher rates. It is because the resort islands are also very dense populated. There's just no more space on the island, so they have to build water villas. If you have a holiday on a resort island, even the pictures looking very nice and like a lonely beach, but they're not. As you see, they're very dense and high, build it, and on your beach strip there will be so many people. It is just a mass tourism. I don't want to talk too bad about the resort islands because the quality of the hotels are very nice. So you have very nice housings. The hotels look very good. Even if it's not a water villa, you have a very great accommodation. So you open your window, your curtains, and you have a perfect view, and the beaches are cleaned every day. But you should make sure you are not alone on this island. There are hundreds of other tourists with the same expectations as you. So let's go to our checklist on the local islands. If you are on a local island, sometimes they are just beside of the resort island. You have the same reef like the resort. The snorkeling spots where you're going are the same. It is the same ocean, the same water quality, everything same. The activities are on the local island actually more cheaper and more exclusive. As I showed you on the resort islands, there are so many tourists. When we made our trips and our activities together with the guest house owner, we were just me, my wife, and the guest house owner. So he know every spot in the area very well. He just asked us, hey, you want to go here for snorkeling? And yeah, he said, yeah, it's perfect. So we go there before the other tourists come. So we have been on the snorkeling place alone, just me and my wife. We have been to seeing to the spots of the dolphins, to the manta rays, and we have been still faster than the tourist masses. They came with huge boats, like double-decker boats, and it was hard to estimate how many people there have been. So at least you have 30, 40 people on this boat, even more. And they're coming not just with one boat, there are so many boats which are coming from one or from many other resort islands to these very spots for snorkeling. And you have immediately hundreds of people there swimming. Also, the prices were very cheap on the local island. We had no real price lists, so we made two trips with two persons, and it cost us around, I guess it was a little bit more than $100 or €100. I guess so. Let's say it was 130, like that around. You will pay for such kind of trip, just one trip per person, around 100, €150 if you are on a resort island. So you would pay 4 times more than we paid for a much more exclusive, much more romantic and very special trip. Yeah, but the biggest sacrifice you should do on the local island are the accommodation. So you just have a guest house. You don't have the perfect feeling like in a 5-4 star resort. You don't have the service, you don't have the view out of your window. You should consider that. If you are okay with that, you can have a very good time. But we made the best of our time. Of course, our room was not that interesting. We went at the night to the beach and it was just beautiful. Just imagine you are in the middle of the ocean on a small tiny island with no light pollution, and you can see the Milky Way in the space. You can see every star. It was an amazing time. The sunsets are so beautiful, same as the sunrises. So you can try to enjoy more the island and the beach, and because on the guest house you will just sleep, eat and take a shower. Also, sacrifice is the beach. If you're searching for the perfect island, as I showed you on Google Earth or Maps, you should also consider the beaches are not getting frequently cleaned as the resort island beaches. Even the water around the Maldives are so clear, but the people there, they're living there on these islands, they have other things to do. They go to the work, they should do their homework, and there is also a lack of infrastructures. Of course, they get trash and waste at home, and usually they throw the waste into the sea, and you will get the waste from all the local islands come to your beach with the currents. Later, other currents will take the trash away again. It is also happening to resort islands. This is why I make here just a yellow light and not a red light. The resort islands are just get cleaned every morning very early before you can go to the beach. But it is the same sea. So if you're swimming out of the beach, it can happen to you that you get confronted with some trash from some other islands. This is reality on the Maldives. But anyway, the beaches are much more lonely. So we have been on our whole trip alone on our beach. Every local island which has a guest house and a license for tourism has one or two, it's called bikini beach or tourist beach. There you can wear also your bathing clothes, and they getting cleaned every 2 or 3 days, but it is just perfectly romantic. You're just alone with your wife, fiance, husband, however. On the beaches of the resorts, even they're cleaned, but they are packed with other tourists. So you are not alone. And it is just depend on what kind of person you are. So both beaches has the pro and cons. The culture, you have contact with the people. You can talk with the people and get in touch with them, with the locals. On the resort island, it is not. The prices, they're just unbeatable. So you have a nice beach, a nice reef, a beautiful island just for a little part of the price which you would spend on your resort island. In my opinion, so it is just too expensive. Even I can understand that resorts want to be more exclusive, but as I told you, it is just a mass tourism. If you join an activity, you are packed with thousands of people, and this is just not a unique feeling. Another points are the economical effect. Less people know if you go to a resort island and you pay per night hundreds and thousands of dollars, the people and the population of the islands has actually less benefit of it. So the money you're spending on the island goes to some billionaires and on international accounts. But if you go to a local island, even you're spending much less for your holiday, but it goes directly to the people. Generally, you can book your guest house on Airbnb, and besides of the fee which Airbnb takes, the money goes straight to a guest house owner. If you make the trips, the guest house owner or the trip provider will get the money. You are supporting the grocery stores, you're supporting the cafe, restaurant owner. So the people have a direct economical effect, and this has a very positive effect on the people on the islands. Also, another point, the ecological impact. There's actually nothing more unecological than a resort island on the Maldives. Okay, you have to fly in with your plane for both accommodations. But in the hotels of the resort islands, you get all your tiny shower gels, soaps separately packed. Your fish comes maybe imported from Norway as you do, and there's just much more trash and energy using, transportation using for your quality of stay. If you are go to a local island, you use the same public transportation as the people use. So you have, after you arriving on Mali, a less surplus effect on the transportation. You eat what the people eat. If you even eat in your guest house, they catch the fish from the sea, so you have no transportation for the fish. They have big packages of soaps, and usually I bring my own soap and my own shampoos, so I even don't need them. And I try not to leave my trash which I brought from Europe, and your ecological effect or impact is much, much less than a resort island. After all, the value for money is much higher on the local islands. There are also different kinds of guest houses. The most guest houses are usually on the same quality of stay, But there are also a few guest houses which has a much more higher quality. It's not the same like a resort, but the accommodation is just more comfortable, more luxury, but of course it is more expensive. At the same time, the resorts have different classifications. It could be that there are islands which has a less beautiful beach, especially after the tsunami of 2004. They get some beaches swapped away and they try to fix it with sand sacks and barriers in the sea. And usually these kind of islands are less popular and more cheaper. And they also have sometimes promotions. What I want to say, there can be an overlap zone. If you have, for example, a more luxury guest house on the one side, and on the other hand, you have a cheap resort island. The distance will be still there. So just for example, as I showed you, we paid for our cheap guest house and everything together €2,200. If you would have took a much more expensive guest house, our cost would also could maybe have been almost €3,000. There are also resort packages which you can find for two-person with round trip for around €4,000. So you have just a gap of €1,000, but you should really check how is the transportation. You have this cheap resorts only if you have a speedboat transfer. The transfer is often not included in your packages, and you should consider that. Let's go to the checklist where you can save money. The first point is book your flights at the right time. Usually the best time for booking flights are between 3 or 1 month before your departure. Normally it is not cheaper if you book more earlier. Check sometimes if there are some promotions or if there are some special circumstances like it is these days. But if there's no special circumstances, you will find your cheap flights so around 3 months before your departure. Check and choose your flight and transfers well. Here you can also save a lot of money because try to avoid accommodations costs on Mali or Hulhumale. It is important to arrive on Mali as early in the morning as possible, so you can take your ferry or speedboat to the island and arrive there in the afternoon. Same for your return flight. Try to avoid a night. Actually, we spent for 1 day in a hotel, but in this case it was worth. We wanted to avoid problems with our transfer. The most people stay 1 night on the return flight, and you should also consider avoid your arrival and your return flight or your transfer times for your flights on the Fridays. As I said, no one is working, no transfer, there's no speedboat, no ferry on the Fridays. Also use your miles of your airline. Even if you think it is not worth to collect miles, it is actually every time worth. I travel kind of lot but I still change my airlines because I just look for the prices. But I'm enrolled in almost every miles program because you never know when you will use this airline again. And I saved for this airline around €100, so €50 per person, because we already had miles from our previous flight. You can also check, do you want a direct flight or you want to have it with a stopover? Some airlines like Qatar offering good conditions if you pay a few bucks more, a 2-3 day stopover in a hotel. Sometimes it is also interesting to add a small trip with your stopover on your holiday. But it's up to you. Also, you should consider the prices. Usually the flights with stopover are more cheaper. The most important point, choose your island well. Check the islands, as I told you before, on Google Maps on the satellite pictures. Stay away from North and South Mali. Check if there is too dense population, check if there's a reef, and then check if there's a guest house and choose your guest house also well. Look if they are offering some activities, if has a good reputation. Also another point which I mentioned before, plan your return flight well. As I said, don't waste your time. This brings us to the next point about potential costs and opportunity costs. On your transfer, there are still risks so that you could miss your flight. Remember, if you're on the Maldives, you are on tiny islands in the middle of the ocean. So everything which is happening is an act of God. The weather can change immediately from sunny to stormy. If it's stormy, if there are high waves, the ferries and the speedboats will not start. Nobody wants to risk his own and your life. And this is what actually almost happened to us. And we started our journey back to Mali very early, and there were a lot of rain, storm, high waves, and we almost turned back. Almost everyone had puked except me and the captain, and we were so thankful after we arrived there. As I said, so this can happen anytime, and you should have a big gap. Our flight was in the night, but you should also know the speedboats and the ferries doesn't run at the night. If it's dark, you are trapped on your island and you miss your flight, and this will be very expensive for you. Avoid these. Better you stay one night in Hulhumale if it is too close. Don't calculate in a few hours. Make it more comfortable, this gap. Also, important point, plan very well what you need during your trip. Bring what you need from your home country. Check if you need a plug adapter for the electricity. Take your sun protection, take your snorkeling clothes. Even the hotel or the guest house owner has often snorkeling tools for borrowing, but I want to have my own because if you miss something, it is very hard to get it on the island. And when you're calculating the costs, still consider it is not about the €50 for your bonus miles. It is not about the cheap €30 trip. It is not about the €50 speedboat transfer. It is also not about the €30 per night in your guest house. It is about all calculated together. If you go to the local island, you should also consider the do's and don'ts on the island. Even on your point of view, you're going to a perfect holiday beach destination, but for the people there, it is just their own remote village. It is just any other conservative remote village like anywhere else in the world. Consider what you are wearing there, how you treat the people there, how you behave there. And there are some restrictions on the local islands. Don't bring any alcohol or drugs from your home country. They are really not kidding. And if you want to avoid some days in the prison, so don't bring your stuff. I know if you have booked your flight to Mali, the first thing you will do is to go shopping and looking for the most fancy clothes. But remember, even if you think about the Maldives on pictures like these, or these, actually the Maldives and the local islands are also these, and these. You are coming to a place where people live their culture, live their religion. They're going there for work, kids go to school, and people go fishing, going to pray, and you coming now in the middle of this society. Every people know each other, there are close families, relations, and as I said, it is just a village like anywhere else which is remote. And if you buying some clothes, just think about, would you wear this clothes in your home village where you're coming from, or another remote village which you know? Don't wear bikinis, bras, or your speedos in public. They have bikini zones, so these bikini beaches or tourist beaches where you can wear bikini. But even if you wear bikini, try not to wear provocative bikinis. Even if you're there for honeymoon and you want to look good for your wife or your husband. But if you are on the public, try to wear long covering clothes. It should not be warm clothes. Buy thin summer clothes which covering your knees and your shoulders, and don't show your underwear, so no see-through clothes. Also, no long skirts with a huge gap up to your hips. Don't behave yourself like if you are on a full moon party in Thailand or on the Kuta beach in Bali. Many people here are very skeptical about the tourism, so respect the people. You can also get in touch with the people. I have been to the mosque and immediately the people was more relieved, and children come to me, we get in touch, the people invite us for dinner, and it was a very lovely time with the people after they understand we are not harming their culture. This news goes very fast about the island, so the guest house owner came to me. He was also very relieved and say, "Oh, I heard you have been in the mosque and you had good contact with the people." And he was quite happy about that because, as I said, there are many skeptical, and they are also, even behind the scenery which you cannot see, and a lot of conflicts with guest house owner, with tour guides and the local people. Not everyone wants the tourists on the islands. Even if you drink your beer and wearing your bikini in public, nobody will maybe say something, because the Muslims are just too polite to discipline a guest, even you're breaking the rules. They will maybe not talk to you directly. They will go to the guest house owner, and this is a very delicate thing. So don't bring your guest house owner in a bad situation. Another point is, yeah, you're on the Maldives, but don't bring any sand, stones, or shells with you back. They are really no kidding. Every hand luggage and also every check-in baggage is getting x-rayed. As you see, these are coral islands, and if you take their sand, this is their home, and they have no humor if you take their sand with you back home. Now, my honest opinion and resume. Yeah, there are a few pros and cons which I want to mention. Let's start with the cons because I want to end this positively. The most sacrifice is, for me, accommodation. I'm traveling a lot. Also, due to my job, I'm still in good hotels, and I just love 4 or 5 star hotels. I love the bed, I love the service, the views out of the windows. And usually, if I go to a trip, I make sure that I have a luxury accommodation. But I was still okay with that because the island, the sunsets, the beach, the reefs, the night views have compensated all of these. Also, another con are the mosquitoes. On the resort islands, they are frequently spraying poison around the greeneries, and but on the local islands not. So you have during the day a lot of mosquitoes, and my sweat smell attracts mosquitoes from around 30 kilometer, and I was get bitten so often even through my clothes. I also brought repellents with me, and they worked quite well. But of course, if you go to the water, if you come out from the water, I was get immediately bitten. Yeah, the restaurants are not that special. They have very simple foods. If there's usually no restaurant, it's more like cafes. So they have 2, 3 snacks from you, more simple. But also here, the food of the guest house owner and their wives are compensating everything. It was a really perfect dinner and perfect meals. Of course, you have to consider the rubbish. These were the cons, and the pros are you have the beautiful ocean, the beautiful underwater life, you have empty beaches, you have exclusive activities, which is really much better than from the resort islands, and so nice, so romantic. There are beautiful sunsets and starry nights because on the local islands there is not as much light like on the resort islands. Usually in the night they turn off the lights. It was just beautiful. The people and culture was very friendly and interesting, so to get in touch with the people. If there are any reason why you cannot or why you don't want to go to the Maldives, here are some alternatives to the Maldives, like Malaysia, Indonesia, Mauritius, and Egypt if you want to have a nice snorkeling trip. I hope this video was helpful to you. Please consider this is my first video. If you have anything to say, just write in the comments. Especially write me if this information helped you for your trip, especially after your trip. Share here your informations and also your opinions. I will read every comment and I'm very interested about that. Thank you for watching. Have a good time and have a nice trip.